how did you come across this concept of, the whole thing where we talked about with Andrea about, going for no?
Sure, absolutely. And probably the best place to start is with my early sales career. I was working for my father in the automotive fleet industry, which is the sale of corporate vehicles. And I did odd jobs around the office, and I was account exec for a while. And then one day he calls me into the office and says, "Hey, I've got some great news." And I said, "What's that?" He said, "It's time to join the big boys." And I said, "Well, what are you talking about?" He goes, "You're going into sales." He said, "Effective today," he said, "you're the Midwestern fleet sales manager for Long Chevrolet here in Chicago. We've got an office set up for you downstairs. Your business cards are printed. Your phone is hooked up. Your name is on the door." And then he drops the bomb. He says, "And sitting on the middle of the desk is a phone book for you to look for prospects to cold call on." Well, I did like the little gulp, like, oh my God. And then he gave me the 4-word sales training program. He said, "Go get 'em, Tiger." And well, I had no sales experience. I just, and my dad, I have to tell you this, my father was a legend in the automotive fleet industry, #1 seller of General Motors product in their history. So not only do I have this new job with no experience, but I'm trying to live up to the expectations and having to function in the shadow of the #1 salesperson in the industry. So anyway, I go down to down to my new office and sat behind the desk, opened the phone book, looked at the names written in the phone book, and I sat there for a full month and didn't make a single sales call. Never dialed the telephone. And it was really simple why. You see, I had a fear of failure. I had a fear of rejection. I certainly didn't think that my message, "Hi, I'm Richard Fenton from Long Chevrolet, and I'd like to sell you some cars." I didn't think my message was as important as whatever it was that these people I was cold calling on were doing in that moment. Well, as you can imagine, after 30 days of not making any calls, I knew I had to do something. So I had to go back to my father, and I had to say something that was the hardest words I've ever, that ever passed my lips. I had to tell my sales legend father, "I can't sell." And Omer, he took it actually surprisingly well. He said, "Rich," he goes, "gosh, come on in here." He goes, "You're right. I never gave you any sales training." He goes, "Come on in here. Let's make some calls together." Well, let's make some calls together. It meant that he was sitting on one side of the desk. I was sitting on the other side of the desk. And I'm going to date myself a little bit here, okay, because it was on a speakerphone so I could only hear my father's one part of it. And anyway, so he opens up his phone book, he runs his finger down the page, and he goes, "Here we go, ABC Rent a Car." He goes, "I've never called on them before. Let's give him a call." Well, he calls them, gets the purchasing agent on the phone. 10 minutes later, he gets an order for 20 cars. And he takes the pad, he writes down all the cars, and he hands me the yellow legal pad. He says, "Here, these are the cars they want." And he goes, "That's selling." Well, as you can imagine, I mean, if I wasn't already feeling inferior when I walked into the office, now I was completely convinced that I wasn't going to be successful at sales. So, I stood up, walked across the room, shut the door behind me, and that was the moment I decided to quit the car business.